Arizona was completely different from any place where we had set traps before. Gone were the wide-open fields and familiar sparse woodlands of Texas. In front of us stretched a harsh, arid landscape filled with dense low brush, rugged rocky slopes, and countless fissures running between the hillsides. Even moving through the terrain became a challenge. Yet on that hard-packed ground, which seemed incapable of holding any trace, fresh wild hog tracks still stood out clearly. They appeared along trails, around low shrubs, and near the few scarce water sources. It was clear evidence that the wild hogs had adapted remarkably well to this unforgiving environment. But a major question quickly emerged. Would the tactics that had proven effective in Texas still work in Arizona? Or would we have to completely change our approach to keep up with these increasingly unpredictable adversaries? To find the answer, the first trap was deployed just as the sun rose above the horizon. The chosen location sat directly on a travel corridor marked by numerous fresh tracks and soil recently torn up by foraging activity.
Put more molasses.
Given Arizona's unpredictable weather conditions, I expected it would take quite some time before the hogs returned. Prolonged heat often causes them to alter their movement patterns and become more cautious. This time, however, things unfolded very differently. Not long after we left the area, an alert from the monitoring system suddenly appeared on the screen. The trap had been triggered. Without hesitation, we immediately turned around and headed back to the site. Even from several dozen meters away, the intense movement inside made it obvious that the result was significant. And just as expected, the entire herd of wild hogs had been contained within the steel enclosure. The sound of repeated impacts echoed through the quiet desert air. We quickly secured the situation and completed the operation before any risks could arise. After the first success, we pushed deeper into the sparse woodland that lay between the rocky slopes. The second trap was placed along a natural corridor where cameras had repeatedly recorded wild hog activity. Everything was completed quickly, and we left before the afternoon temperatures climbed too high. Unlike the previous attempt, hours passed without a single signal. It was not until very late at night that an activation alert finally arrived. When the sun came up, the team returned to the trap site. The marks on the ground showed that there had been plenty of activity throughout the night. And as we moved closer, the result became immediately apparent. Several wild hogs had been trapped inside after spending hours trying to find a way out. Once again, the trap proved its effectiveness in one of the harshest environments we had ever worked in. The final trap site was located deep within a remote area covered with thorny brush and natural rock outcrops. Just minutes after deployment, the system was triggered. Early the next morning, we set out immediately. The dry, scorching air had already begun to settle over the landscape. When we arrived, there was little doubt about the outcome. The herd of wild hogs was still confined inside after hours of being trapped. The final task was completed quickly, marking the end of the Arizona operation. As the last trap was packed away, I reflected on the journey we had just completed. Arizona was harsher, more difficult to access, and far less predictable than anywhere we had worked before. Wild hogs can adapt to their surroundings, change their activity patterns, and become increasingly wary after every encounter with humans. Yet they still move according to their own routines. And as long as we find the right location at the right time, they can still make mistakes. Even so, this battle has never truly ended. Somewhere among Arizona's dry and unforgiving landscapes, fresh tracks continue to appear every day. And sooner or later, we will undoubtedly return. For an entire week, even though traps had been placed throughout the forest, wild boars continued to appear regularly on the cameras. They did not disappear. Every night they left fresh tracks and rooted up the ground. Yet whenever they approached a trap, the entire sounder would stop at a fixed distance, quietly change direction, and avoid locations where traps had previously been set. For the first time, I realized they were no longer acting purely on instinct. If we wanted to control the herd, our strategy had to change before they learned to avoid every trap we had prepared. As the situation became increasingly difficult to manage, I knew a different approach was needed. Instead of small traps that could only hold a few animals at a time, the goal was to capture the entire sounder at once. After hours of scouting, we selected a clearing deep within a pine forest. It was quiet, rarely disturbed by people, and located along a familiar travel route. Every detail was carefully planned to reduce the animal's suspicion as much as possible.
In a circle, corn on the outside, mouth.
When night fell, the surveillance cameras recorded dark shapes moving silently from the edge of the forest. They paused, sniffed the air, and continued forward. Eventually, the first boars entered the trap, followed by others. The entire sounder gathered around the bait, unaware of what was waiting ahead. Once enough animals had moved into the center, the gates suddenly dropped, completely blocking the exit. The following morning, we could hear sounds coming from inside long before we reached the trap. That alone confirmed the system had worked exactly as planned. However, this was only the beginning. 2 additional traps were deployed near the farm's crop fields. To be honest, I had low expectations for this location because it was wide open and lacked natural cover. The results were completely unexpected. After just one night, the number of boars captured far exceeded our predictions. When we arrived to inspect the traps, the scene left me stunned. Animals that were normally extremely cautious seemed to have let their guard down. Loud impacts echoed continuously as they slammed into the steel structure searching for an escape, causing the entire trap to shake under the pressure of dozens of frightened animals. After completing the setup, the team left the area to minimize human scent. As darkness covered the forest, the cameras recorded the first movements. Familiar black silhouettes emerged from between the pine trees and slowly approached the bait while carefully watching their surroundings. At first only a few animals investigated the area, but more gradually joined the group and entered the trap zone. Everything unfolded exactly as expected. When the moment arrived, the gates suddenly dropped and shattered the silence of the forest. The entire sounder immediately panicked. Squeals, collisions, and the sound of rattling metal echoed through the area. The boars repeatedly charged the steel frame in an attempt to escape, causing the trap to shake continuously. Even so, the structure remained secure until the handling team arrived. Once the inspection was complete, we processed each trap according to the prepared procedures. This stage required absolute precision because even a small mistake could be dangerous. Moving large, powerful boars was never simple, and every step required close coordination among team members. From aggressive adults to younger animals, each one had to be carefully controlled before being loaded onto transport vehicles. By the end of the day, as the truck left the area, the forest became quiet once again. But I knew this was not the end. The wild boar population was far larger than we had imagined, and the traps only reduced part of the pressure they placed on the environment. Even so, it was a necessary step to keep the situation under control before it grew beyond manageable limits. If you found this story interesting, leave a comment and follow the channel to join us on future operations.
Hogs from just utterly laying waste to the land. When they show up, buddy, it is bad news.
They're incredibly powerful, remarkably intelligent, and can charge through dense brush at speeds that rival a race car. These armored tanks of the forest fear neither thorny thickets nor predators armed with razor-sharp teeth. They are true masters of survival, turning what seems like an ordinary snout into a powerful tool and transforming their tusks into formidable weapons. Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're taking a closer look at the wild boar, one of the boldest and most adaptable animals in the natural world. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Now, let's get started. Wild boars are far more than just the wild ancestors of domestic pigs. They are true survival machines, weighing anywhere from 440 to 660 pounds and protected by coarse hair and a thick layer of fat that acts like natural armor. Their most fearsome weapons are their tusks, which constantly sharpen themselves through friction as they chew, creating natural blades that can be extremely dangerous. Found across a vast range stretching from the forests of Europe to the tropical jungles of Asia, wild boars are excellent swimmers, capable of traveling dozens of miles and eating almost anything they can find. Their diet includes roots, seeds, insects, small animals, and even carrion. It is this combination of strength, adaptability, and an omnivorous appetite that has made them one of the most formidable wild animals on Earth. Deep in the wilderness, few predators are more feared than wolves. Yet when a wolf pack decides to hunt a wild boar, the outcome is far from guaranteed. Wild boars typically live in family groups led by experienced females that work together to protect their young. Older males, on the other hand, often live alone and are opponents that many predators would rather avoid. Wolves try to wear their prey down through long pursuits, but wild boars possess astonishing endurance. When danger approaches, they can burst through dense thorny vegetation that is difficult for their pursuers to navigate. With their wedge-shaped heads and incredibly powerful neck muscles, wild boars slice through thick brush like living arrows, often leaving their predators far behind. But the most fascinating moment comes when a wild boar decides it no longer wants to run. Instead of surrendering, it suddenly turns and launches a counterattack. Imagine a 440-pound wall of muscle charging straight at you at nearly 25 miles per hour. A single slash from those razor-sharp tusks can inflict devastating injuries. Wolves understand this risk very well, which is why they often choose to back away and search for prey that presents a much lower chance of injury. As wild boar populations grow and habitats become more crowded, conflicts with humans become increasingly common. In a single night, a group of wild boars can turn carefully maintained farmland into a scene of destruction. Using their powerful snouts, they tear through fields of corn, potatoes, and many other crops. The problem goes beyond property damage. Wild boars can also carry dangerous diseases, including African swine fever. These diseases have the potential to cause severe losses in the livestock industry and threaten food security across entire regions. For this reason, wild boars are considered a serious biological threat in several parts of the world. The conflict between humans and wild boars has become so intense that traditional hunting methods are often no longer enough to keep their numbers under control. Wild boars reproduce rapidly, and in areas where populations become too dense, authorities are forced to adopt more aggressive management strategies. Across many parts of the United States and Australia, large-scale trapping systems have been introduced to manage entire sounders of wild boars across vast landscapes that are difficult to monitor using conventional methods. These modern traps combine surveillance cameras, bait stations, and remote-triggered gates to significantly improve efficiency while reducing the animal's suspicion. Nature has created a survival machine that is nearly perfect, and in response, humans continue to develop increasingly sophisticated strategies to match its resilience. That is the story of the wild boar, one of the toughest, strongest, and most adaptable animals in the wild. Previous operations had delivered significant results, but they were unable to completely eliminate feral hogs from the area. Across the fields surrounding the Texas ranch, fresh tracks continued to appear night after night. Forest trails were torn apart, and patches of ground had been dug up as if a small storm had swept through. It was clear evidence of one reality. Groups of feral hogs were still active out there. And this time, our mission was not only to reduce their numbers, but also to deal with animals that had become increasingly wary after repeated encounters with traps. The first trap was placed at the edge of the woods, where dense vegetation provided natural cover before the hogs moved into open areas. This was one of the travel routes that our cameras had recorded multiple times before. We completed the setup early in the morning and left quickly, trying to leave as little trace as possible. That night, the trap signal was triggered. As soon as the sun rose the following morning, we returned and could already hear noises echoing from the distance. Inside the steel trap, feral hogs were packed tightly together in a confined space. They moved constantly, crashing into the fencing and creating a chaotic racket. After days of monitoring, seeing the first trap produce results gave the entire team a boost of motivation. We quickly processed the site, removed the captured animals, and prepared for the next deployment location. The second location was completely different. It was an open clearing in the middle of the ranch, with almost no cover or hiding places. To be honest, I did not expect much from this spot. But sometimes simplicity creates the biggest surprises. Perhaps because they did not feel threatened, the hogs entered the area with little hesitation. When we returned the next morning, the sight before us genuinely caught me off guard. The trap contained far more feral hogs than expected, and most of them were large, fully grown adults. The individuals responsible for some of the most severe damage to farmland. After completing the work, we added fresh bait and reactivated the entire system. Tracks around the area indicated that many more hogs were still moving nearby. However, the next target would prove even more remarkable. The third trap was placed along a forest trail where the ground had been worn into a clearly defined path by constant hog activity. Everything was carefully prepared early that morning. No one expected that by the end of the day, the trap would already be completely full. When we returned, a chaotic scene awaited us. The trapped hogs continuously pushed against the fencing, circled around, and crowded into one another. Signs at the site suggested that nearly the entire group had traveled along this route and entered the trap area at the same time. The result proved that choosing the right travel corridor can sometimes be more important than any piece of equipment. As I moved to the final location, I found myself in a dense pine forest with secluded terrain and very little sign of human activity. The trap was left overnight. By the following morning, despite heavy rain that had been falling since before dawn, we decided to return and check it. Even from a distance, strong vibrations from the fencing could be seen through the curtain of wet grass. As we got closer, an entire group of feral hogs came into view inside the trap, clustered into smaller groups and constantly trying to escape after being confined for hours. The rain made the work more difficult, but it also marked the end of the entire operation. Every trap in every location had produced clear results, helping ease the pressure on the surrounding farms. Yet when I looked down at the damp ground still covered with fresh tracks, I understood that this was not the end. Out there, deep within the vast forest, other groups of feral hogs were still on the move. And before long, we would be back once again.
Look at that.
Not every battle in agriculture is fought between humans and the weather. Sometimes, the enemy emerges from the darkness, moving without a sound and leaving behind fields torn apart overnight. That enemy is the feral hog. Every year, feral hogs cause an estimated $2.5 billion in economic damage across the United States, particularly in Texas. Their destruction is considered a major ecological and agricultural disaster throughout the country. So I began by surveying the trails most frequently used by the hogs. Deep among the dense brush, a steel corral trap was set directly along one of their regular travel corridors. Bait was scattered gradually, leading farther inside to make everything appear completely natural. With feral hogs, even the slightest unusual detail can be enough to make the entire group turn away. Every aspect had to be carefully planned before nightfall arrived. As darkness settled over the forest, the unwanted visitors finally appeared. They approached slowly, constantly sniffing the air and scanning their surroundings. One by one, they stepped into the trap. Then, without warning, the steel gate slammed shut. The loud crash shattered the silence of the night. In an instant, the entire group erupted into chaos. Powerful bodies pushed and collided against the steel framework in a desperate attempt to escape. The following morning, the team returned to the site immediately. Even from a considerable distance, the intense noise coming from inside the trap could be heard clearly. The feral hogs were still charging into the steel bars, displaying remarkable strength. We quickly began the containment procedure, carefully working through each step to ensure the entire group could be secured safely and efficiently. However, that was only the beginning. The next trap was placed along the edge of the forest, where the hogs regularly emerged to feed each night. When we returned the following morning, the sight before us surprised everyone. Inside the trap was a larger number of feral hogs than we had ever captured before. They packed the enclosure tightly, constantly shoving against one another and creating an atmosphere so tense it was almost suffocating. Every impact against the steel frame echoed through the area.
Stirred up.
Yeah. There you go. See, I just want to make sure there's no gaps under the right there. Guys, how close we are to the back of the house. Somehow they do that.
A few days later, another trap was deployed on the western side of the forest. This area frequently showed fresh rooting activity and a network of heavily used trails. That night, the trap performed exactly as planned. This time, however, the work was far more difficult. There was no machinery available to assist us. Every task had to be carried out by hand. Each animal was managed through experience, patience, and absolute concentration. Even a minor mistake could quickly turn the situation dangerous.
Each family's done made a call, so and see that step. You'll hand me that strap. I told you I don't know whip. What was that? End up being bushy fine. Oh yeah, baby. Go.
The final location lay deep within a dense pine forest, almost completely isolated from the surrounding areas. Everything was carefully prepared before we left. Yet the next morning, when we returned, my first impression was that something felt different. Then, as soon as I saw what was inside the trap, I understood why. These were not ordinary feral hogs. Massive animals with enormous bodies nearly filled the entire enclosure. Every movement they made produced heavy sounds that echoed throughout the forest. The trap, which had seemed enormous before, now appeared strangely small. Their power was obvious in every strike against the steel frame, causing the entire structure to shake violently. When the final operation came to an end, the forest gradually returned to its familiar silence. Looking back on the entire journey, I realized this had been far more than a routine control effort. We had temporarily regained control, but everyone understood that this confrontation was far from over. Somewhere within the dark forests beyond, other groups of hogs were still moving through the shadows, waiting for another opportunity to emerge once again. If you caught only a quick glimpse of the dark patch at the far end of the field, you might think it was nothing more than a cluster of low trees swaying in the night wind. But the farmers of Texas knew the truth was far different. Hidden inside that darkness were massive feral hogs, creatures that had turned hundreds of acres of farmland into a battlefield in just a few hours. They appeared without warning, tore through cornfields, destroyed fences, then vanished before sunrise. For months, these animals had avoided every attempt to stop them. They moved like ghosts, leaving behind only tracks, mud, and growing destruction. For 6 straight months, multiple control teams tried every possible method. Cameras were installed across the area. Movement routes were carefully marked. Traps were placed at the most strategic locations. Yet the hogs always seemed to stay one step ahead of the humans. They changed their travel patterns, approached food sources from different directions, and quickly avoided any place that showed signs of danger. That was why, instead of rushing into action, the team chose to rely on their most important weapon this time: patience. For several days in a row, fermented corn was scattered around the trap sites. Its scent drifted through the night air, slowly drawing in small groups of hogs. The unusual part was that the trap gates always remained open. There were no engine noises, no falling doors, no signs that might trigger suspicion. Night after night, the hogs grew more confident. They began walking deeper inside, feeding comfortably before leaving as if the place were completely safe. On the decisive night, camera systems positioned in multiple locations simultaneously transmitted live footage back to the monitoring screens. At the first site, the smaller hogs had already moved completely inside the control zone. At another location, several massive boars were slowly approaching the bait. But the most important target still had not appeared. Inside the truck cabin, almost no one spoke. Every eye remained fixed on the glowing screens cutting through the darkness. No one wanted to ruin the operation with a reckless decision. Time passed with unbearable slowness. 1 hour. 2 hours. Then 3 in the morning. Finally, the moment everyone had been waiting for arrived. The enormous lead boar crossed the final boundary and stepped deep into the enclosure. Across every monitor, the entire sounder was finally in position. At that instant, silence inside the cabin became absolute. Fingers rested on the controls, ready. Everyone understood there would only be one chance. The signal was triggered. In an instant, multiple trap gates slammed shut at the same time. The violent sound of metal crashing echoed through the night, shattering the silence of the Texas countryside. The hogs suddenly charged in every direction searching for an escape, but every exit had already been sealed. At multiple locations, the traps completed their task simultaneously. What had failed for months was finally accomplished in only a few seconds. But the operation was far from over. The moment the traps were activated, the control team immediately moved toward each site. Under the glare of headlights and flashlight beams, they had to inspect the entire system as quickly as possible. The sounds of thrashing animals echoed across the fields as the trapped hogs desperately searched for a way out. Every step forward demanded absolute concentration. In the thick darkness, there was no room for mistakes. Only when the first rays of sunlight appeared over the horizon did the true scale of the operation finally become clear. From up close, the massive feral hogs revealed exactly why they were capable of causing such enormous destruction. Their huge bodies, incredible strength, and remarkable adaptability had made them one of the greatest threats facing agricultural regions across Texas. Six control sites, countless hours of continuous surveillance, and a carefully prepared plan had finally produced the result they wanted. This was not a victory of brute force. It was a victory built on observation, calculation, and patience in the long struggle between humans and the unwanted invaders of Texas land.
State wildlife officials say they are more destructive and feral hogs in Texas than any other state right now.
Every year, millions of acres of farmland across Texas face a destructive invader that emerges after dark. It is not drought, crop pests, or powerful storms, but invasive feral hogs. They tear up fields, destroy crops, damage irrigation systems, and carry the risk of spreading disease. The damage they cause in Texas has reached billions of dollars annually, contributing significantly to the estimated $2.5 billion in losses across the United States each year. In many areas, residents no longer view this as a typical wildlife issue. It has become a crisis that has persisted for years. That is also why I am here. A week ago, a large-scale feral hog control operation was officially launched across multiple agricultural regions. Since then, every day has begun long before sunrise. The pickup truck rolls down rough dirt roads toward the fields suffering the worst damage. And almost every morning, the scene waiting at the end of the journey is the same. Massive steel traps shake under the weight of dozens of struggling animals inside. The ground around them is torn apart in large patches, as if a violent storm had just passed through. The sound of grunts echoing through the stillness of the early morning is enough to reveal the severity of the problem. Yet what concerns us most is not the number of hogs being captured. It is the fact that they never seem to run out. After every removal, fresh tracks appear again. Cornfields continue to be dug up. New trails emerge across the farmland. It feels as though behind every group that is eliminated, another is already moving in to take its place. That is why the most important part of the job begins immediately after a trap has been cleared. We follow every fresh sign left in the soft soil, analyzing movement patterns and identifying the travel corridors the hogs are using. This is an opponent that is far from predictable. They constantly change feeding areas, alter their routes, and adapt quickly to their surroundings. As a result, we are forced to keep relocating our trapping systems, dismantling them in one location and rebuilding them in another. Corn continues to be spread across the ground, not only to attract the animals, but also to create a sense of safety within the herd. As their confidence grows, the entire sounder begins gathering around the food source. At first, only a few cautious steps are taken near the trap entrance. Then come the bolder individuals willing to move farther inside. Eventually, nearly the entire group gathers in the center of the enclosure. While they are busy competing for the last kernels of corn, the signal is sent. The heavy steel gate drops instantly. The silence of the night is shattered by violent impacts, flying dirt, and desperate attempts to escape. This time, there is no way out. The entire group is now contained within the control system. As the sun begins to rise above the horizon, a new workday gets underway. Despite spending hours inside the trap, the feral hogs retain all of their aggression and remarkable strength. Every step must be carried out carefully to ensure the safety of everyone involved. Yet even after successful captures, new signs continue to appear out in the fields. It is a constant reminder that this is a long-term battle. If left unchecked, a single group of feral hogs can destroy the results of months of hard work in just a few nights. They tear up the soil, devastate crops, damage infrastructure, and continuously expand their range. That is why these traps do not exist to create drama. They serve as the last line of defense, protecting harvests, safeguarding the livelihoods of farming families, and preserving everything they have spent an entire year working tirelessly to build.
Within just a few nights, wild boars had started showing up right along the edges of the fields. They rooted up the soil, damaged crops, and moved closer and closer to livestock areas. The signs they left behind made it clear that this was no longer a minor problem. If action wasn't taken quickly, the damage would only become more severe. We couldn't afford to keep waiting, and we certainly couldn't allow them to return night after night. That left us with only one option: begin setting traps, not just to stop individual animals, but to control the entire sounder before the situation spiraled out of control. The first trap was set under the cover of darkness deep inside a wooded area along the edge of a Texas farm, where wild boars have been showing up consistently for several days. Our lights were used only when absolutely necessary. Every step was completed quickly but carefully before we left, leaving the trap hidden in the dense darkness of the forest. That very night, the trap was triggered. When we returned the following morning, we could immediately tell something was different. Even from a distance, the sounds coming from inside suggested that something had been caught. As we moved closer, I saw several wild boars trapped after a long night inside the enclosure. They were constantly moving and bumping into one another in the confined space. There was no time to hesitate. I began handling the situation in a controlled and deliberate manner, keeping a steady pace to prevent complications. The work continued as each animal was secured and removed from the trap. as planned. The second trap was deployed along the eastern edge of the forest in an area of tall grass that showed heavy signs of wild boar activity. At first, the location seemed promising. We completed the setup that night and left as scheduled. However, the results the next morning were far from what we expected. The trap had been triggered, but only a few animals remained inside. Tracks around the area revealed that most of the sounder had managed to escape. It was clear that the location wasn't concealed well enough, making the boars more cautious and forcing us to rethink our trapping strategy for future attempts. The third trap was checked at first light along the southern edge of a pine forest while a thin layer of fog still covered the ground. Even from a distance, the sounds coming from inside suggested much better results than we had hoped for. As we approached, the scene was truly impressive. Dozens of wild boars were packed inside the trap, creating a tense and chaotic mass of movement. Rather than rushing in, we kept a safe distance and carefully assessed the situation before beginning the collection process. Every step was carried out according to plan to ensure the safety of the team and maintain full control throughout the operation. The final trap was placed deep within the pine forest beside a reservoir that the boars visited regularly. It was a location I was confident they wouldn't ignore, especially since the water source had become a consistent gathering point for the entire sounder. Everything was carefully prepared before we left. Even so, what happened next exceeded all expectations. Later that evening, an alert suddenly appeared on the mobile app connected to our camera system. The moment I opened the live feed, I knew something unusual was happening. There were so many wild boars inside that they nearly filled the entire trap. They continuously shoved against the panels, while several large animals slammed into the steel framework, creating a relentless barrage of heavy impacts that echoed through the night. This operation may have come to an end, but the battle against invasive wild boars is far from over. As pressure on crops and livestock continues to grow, the effort to protect farms will remain an ongoing challenge for years to come. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel to join us on future adventures.